What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. And as always, I'm your host, Bailey Egbert, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, buddy?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. There's a lot going on, but no, we're hanging in there. We had a steelhead guide trip this morning. It was kind of nice. My client texted me at 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, said he was running late. So I went back to sleep before adventuring on like a 6-mile hike, and my client hooked like 25 steelhead today. It was a fun day.
It's action packed. Okay, well that's good then. I
Yeah,
always could tell by your first like noise that you make how the day goes. It's either a good hoof or it's like if you could tell if you're depressed.
Oh yeah, no, there's no depression when you're like out in the wilderness and taking it all in. Like that part is relieving all in itself. But when we're losing fish, that's when I start getting really depressed, and you get that. But no, everything's good. Just a little tired, but that's like par for the course at this point. So we're hanging in there. What's up with you?
Not much, man. It's kind of nice in a sense to be done, and obviously our guest today, Mr. Brent Ehrler, who we're going to dive into some fishing with today. But I'm sure he can agree that he probably there's definitely they're busy this time of year, but there's less traveling is probably nice because there's less truck time for these guys for the most part. So I'm sure he can agree with the less travels is kind of nice. Where I get 2 months here where no work trips. No, like I'm not traveling for a tournament or anything like that. I'm gonna fly to Florida for a couple of days for Christmas, and then that's it. So it's kind of nice actually getting some home time. You know, taking fiance on some dates, kind of racking up the brownie points for when I do want to travel for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
it's
that's
that
probably
time.
a good thing.
yeah. But dude, tell the folks because you've been doing a freaking sick job with our new show, the Lure Lab. Tell the show, like everyone that's tuning in right now, what they missed last week if they haven't tuned in, and then what's coming up for this week's episode.
All right, so on Saturday's episode that passed over the past weekend, we talked about a different version of the Alabama rig. We had Sam Rardin on, who is a guide up on Mille Lacs in Minnesota. We were talking the Minnesota rig. Minnesota has a state law where you can only have one bait on like an Alabama rig style lure. And we dove deep into detail on that. And then this Saturday coming up, we have Alex Redwine, who's coming on to talk about winter jerkbait fishing and the nuances that he enjoys using while targeting largemouth and smallmouth with the jerkbait during the winter time.
That's going to be a fun one.
Be a good one.
Because, yeah. I need to get better at that from the pure fact that I have zero patience to throw jerkbait in the winter for the amount of like
30
time
seconds.
You just need to. I can't
40
do it.
seconds.
I can't do it.
So,
yeah, crazy. But today's going to be fun because we're kind of going to go down that sort of rabbit hole in terms of the finesse side of things because our guest today is probably one of the best, in my mind, finesse fishermen on the planet right now. So I think without further ado, Andy, let's bring him on here. Mr. Brent Ehrler. What's going on, sir?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good evening. Yeah. Thanks again.
Yeah, easy. I'm glad it worked out and appreciate you guys having me. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. We've been trying to do this show for a while because, you know, internally we have like a little group chat between Andy, Deacon, and I. And we kind of like, we try to like, we're very lax in terms of how we run things, but we do try to have like some sort of strategy and like who we're going to bring on coming up and trying to work together to get guests on. And we've been probably saying for the past couple months, like, we need to get Brent. We need to get Brent. And because we obviously have like that, we have a connection outside on the work side with X2. And I've been very fortunate for that. But I'm like, man, I've been meaning to get Brent on. I'm like, I'll text him tomorrow and I'll forget. And then it's like, I finally remembered, like, okay, I'm going to text him right now. We'll get him on the show because, dude, I've been wanting to pick your brain for a very long time because Andy and I are both finesse guys. So we're excited to tap into that brain of knowledge.
Well, I love it. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And perfect timing. You know, this is the off season and not much happening right now. I'm coming up to getting my boat here pretty quick. So I'll be back on the water. I mean, I've honestly really only fished a few days since September, the final event in Mille Lacs. I've only fished 2 days since then, and it was for a cup event. the team, cup event with Major League Fishing. So I haven't been on the water, and really the fishing is pretty tough out here where I live. I mean, I'm in Southern California, a lot of small city lakes. It gets really tough. I remember years ago, before I started fishing nationally, I used to fish a lot of tournaments out here. So I would be out at my local lake, which is Lake Paris, and I was so sick of not catching anything that I started fishing live bait. And at the time we could use crawdads, and so I went out and I'd fly line crawdads out there, which we can't anymore because it's California and they won't let us do stuff like that. Crawdads and night crawlers, and it was funny because I went from catching 2 a day to catching 20 or 30 a day. And then I had a tournament coming up and I went, oh man, I don't know how to catch them without, using live bait. So I had to go back into that, mode of only catching a couple of fish a day to go fish a tournament. And it's interesting, to see that the difference, those fish are still there. They just do not want to bite the artificial stuff.
Yeah. So I know there's definitely a stigma amongst bass anglers from this using live bait type of deal, but I definitely think there's something to be said from just trying to learn fish behavior and fish patterns that live bait is obviously way better at getting the job done most of the time than our artificials. We've talked about it on the show before, but I have a buddy on Lake Chickamauga that we went and fished a specific stretch with artificials, didn't catch anything, nothing. And my buddy cast netted live gizzard shad. We go through, and within 15 minutes, my buddy had 2 over 10. And it was just it just kind of goes to show we are missing way more fish that are there that we don't even realize. You might go through that stretch I don't think they're here. When joke's on you, buddy. They're there. It's wild what live bait can do, man.
For sure. It's crazy the difference. And, it actually, this was going on 20 years ago that I did this. And it did teach me a lot. It was kind of funny because I had that tournament coming up. And what I noticed is that, so what I would do is I'd take these night crawlers and I'd pin them on a drop shot. And I'd pin them wacky rig on a drop shot. And I'd throw them out on a structure spot. And I didn't really know. I go, well, do I just sit here and hold it like I'm fishing for catfish? Do I work it a little bit? I didn't really know what to do. So, I dead sticked it for a long time. I know these structure spots, and I cast it out there. And I mean, it was very first cast. I throw it out there, and I remember just trying to decide what I'm going to do. And it sat there for about 30 seconds, a minute, and I just lifted it, and I gave it one little jiggle, and I let it sit back down, and my line jumped like that. And I caught one. So then I started doing that, and that's how I started catching this with these night crawlers. But when I wouldn't catch one, I would reel it in, and that night crawler would be 10, 12 inches long, that was wacky rig. When he's in the water, they string out. I am not joking. They are that long.
Jeez.
And so when this tournament rolled up, I talked to a buddy of mine that Derek Rader, he owned a company back in the day called Raider Baits. It was a garage hand pour deal that he did. And I go, hey, do you have any long, skinny worms? He goes, no, but tell you what. He goes, I can take our 6-inch and pull it out of the mold before it's cured and stretch them. So he took these 6-inch straight-tailed, hand-poured worms while they were still warm and just went like this and made them to like a 12-inch long worm. And he shows up at the tournament and he hands me a Ziploc bag full of these things. And I go out and I roll up on one of my spots that I've been catching them on the live night crawlers. And I pin that thing on just like I did the night crawler. I throw it out there and I just let it sit on the bottom for like 30 seconds, a minute. I lift it, I just jiggle it for a second. I let it sit there. I count to like 30, or a minute. And I lift it, I jiggle it, and I drop my rod tip. My line goes boink, just like that. And I was the only guy who had a limit that day, and I caught everyone fishing just like a night crawler. So
interesting.
It taught me something. Those fish are there, but they like it really, really slow, in the wintertime like that. And I haven't really fished that way, since then, or going, on tour and running back east, because I show up on a lake that I've never been to before. I don't know if the spot's good or not. So I can't afford to do something like that. You could be fishing that on the wrong spot and not catch them. So, it's different than that. But I knew that they were there because I'd been catching them and, it gave me the confidence to try it. And like I said, I was the only guy in that tournament to have a limit. And I think the next person had maybe 3 fish. It's a team tournament, 2 guys fishing it, at a time. And I finished second. The guy that won had a 10-pounder that he caught on a swim bait. Or I think he might have had 3. He had a 10 and 2 twos and beat me by, a pound, something like that. Like he caught that 10-pounder. And, back then that was the deal in these team tournaments, is that to win a single day team tournament in these lakes here, they used to stock trout. So you had to catch that 10-pounder on a swim bait. Otherwise, you're going to win. Now, granted, if it was a 2-day tournament or a 3-day tournament, the guy's going to get that bite once and he's not going to win the tournament. But on a single day tournament, the guy that wins is always the one that catches that 10-pounder on the swim bait.
Mm-hmm.
But same thing, in California, they don't stock anymore, so we can't throw swim baits anymore.
Such a why does it have to be a buzzkill? Like, why do we have to ruin the fun things in life?
It's I guess in these lakes they're considered an invasive species. Same thing with crawdads and same thing with water dogs. We used to be able to fish that stuff, and I've never fished a water dog, but they used to be legal to fish those things, and that's how guys caught a lot of real big ones out here in the wintertime. They Carolina rig those big water dogs. I mean, they'd catch 10-pounders all day.
Wow.
What is a water dog? Don't mind me.
It's like an underwater salamander lizard thing.
Yeah. It's
like a mud puppy.
Look it up. They're kind of crazy. Salamander or a water dog. Yeah, look them up. They have like these weird gills.
Yeah.
And they have a flat paddle tail, almost like a pollywog. But they're real soft. I mean, they're just a soft, little meaty, it's like a big giant goby almost.
I can't believe you've never seen one of those, Bailey. They're around up here.
I didn't know they're called water dog.
Yeah.
It's such a cool name. That's such a cool.
Look at those gills off the side. Look at that thing.
That thing is wild.
Oh, you're eating all these Portuguese.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna get dogs.
Just put in water dog, water lizard, or something. I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah, we get the point. I think that's wild. Okay,
well, that's what I call seals in the ocean right now. I call them water dogs. They're just basically a dog that lives in the water.
I have heard that reference for seals, and that would actually make sense. That was cool. So this, like, that specific scenario, like taking this night crawler that you use, translating that to a worm that you had, poured and all that jazz, is that kind of the route that you've taken to? Because in my mind, I think you're probably one of the best and most notable finesse fishermen on tour right now. Is that kind of the sprinkles that started that, or is that just because it's like this Western movement for a finesse fishing standpoint?
I just think that where I live, that was what we did, for a long time. We just, we threw a split shot, that was the only way to catch them. And you throw these little hand poured 3-inch reapers, on a split shot rig. And then, then the drop shot came out, and, really the West Coast was where it really took off. We learned it from a lot of the Japanese anglers that came over to fish the US Open. They're the ones that threw the drop shot. They're the ones that showed us, and they're the ones that caught fish behind us when we were, fishing out at Lake Mead. So, we picked it up that way just based on what they did, and they're the ones that taught us. I learned to throw a drop shot from a lot of these Japanese anglers that I fished with, or have ties with the sponsorship, and really they're the ones that taught us. So where I live, that was how we fished. Northern California, you look at guys like Skeet and Ish Monroe, they grew up fishing around Clear Lake and Delta. So they're kind of like those power fishermen. I didn't. I grew up in Southern California where the small, reservoirs that were tough fishing. Like I said, you go out right now and, I haven't been out, but, it's not very good. I worked a weigh-in for my boat dealership, Anglers Marine. They're out of Anaheim. They had a anglers boat owners tournament, meaning that if you bought a boat from Anglers Marine, then you could fish this tournament. And it was out on Diamond Valley, and there were 70 some boats, and there was one limit caught out of 70 boats out at Diamond Valley. So that's just the way it is out here. It's really tough. You go out, and I can't tell you how many days I've gone out, this time of year and I catch 2 or 3 all day. So it's kind of a weird time to go fishing out here. So, finesse, slow down, small baits, fish really slow. That's kind of what we have to do right now.
That's wild. So,
but that's probably why I'm more comfortable with it, when I'm going fishing back east. But, I don't do a lot of the techniques that I really did out here. I've never done that thing of, casting the bait out and letting it sit there for a minute and jiggle it once and let it sit for another minute. That's something specific here in my home lake. But back east, I'm comfortable with a spinning rod and throwing a shaky head or a drop shot or, things like that. I'm comfortable with that.
Right. So you mentioned something earlier that kind of piqued my interest, and I'm really curious to ask this. You mentioned how, like, with certain sponsors, how you can kind of tap into the connections overseas, like in Japan and different thing like that. I'm not asking you by any means to say or expose anything, but like, you definitely got some stuff up your sleeve that no one's seen over here. Like, are you able to just say yes or no if you got some like sneaky juice that's over there that no one knows about over here?
I don't. That's the funny thing. I'm so far removed from all the trick stuff right now. I usually hear about it later. But, I will give you an example of my first season on tour. I started off not great in this. This was in 2005 with the FLW tour. We had 2 back-to-back tournaments in Florida. I finished in the 100-something place in one. I finished in the 70-something in the other. And the third tournament was in Louisiana on the Ouachita River, and I finished 170th out of 200 guys. So I have a 120th, a 70th, and a 170th. My first 3 events fishing nationally on the FLW tour. And after that complete bomb there in Louisiana, I go, man, I'm out of my league. I don't know what I'm doing. This is not what I should be doing. I bit off more than I can chew. And the next event was at Beaver Lake in Arkansas, which is a clear water reservoir, and the shaky head is a big deal there. Well, I go, man, these guys have no clue what's about them. I'm going to pull out a drop shot with the 3-color row worm, the hand pour, and go out there. These guys have no idea what's going to hit them. And man, I struggled for the first 2 days of practice. And I was rooming with Art Berry, and Art he comes into the room one night and he goes, bro, I had like 50 bites today. I'm like, gosh dang it. I go, I had like 5 all day, or 3. And he goes, you throwing the shaky head at all? And I go, no, I'm throwing the drop shot. He goes, shaky head, 1/8 ounce jig head with just a green pumpkin trick worm, or finesse worm. I'm like, no, I got a road worm. He goes, bro, listen. So I rig up a shaky head and I go out and I have like 30 bites the next day. So, it's kind of funny that it's the basic stuff, and your confidence is what you catch them on. I don't have any of these trick things that people don't know about. I'm throwing the same stuff that other guys are. The nice thing about that is that I'm able to kind of I'm able to pack easier, for my trips now. I don't have to have all this trick stuff with me on tour. It's easy for me to go back and fish my strengths, know what I'm comfortable with doing. If I'm going to flip, I'm going to go and flip a Yamamoto flapping hog. If I'm going to go and shallow crank, I'm going to throw one Lucky Craft 1.5. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it goes. I'm going to have a Senko tied on for a bunch of stuff, a Texas rig, a wacky rig, a NACO rig. I keep it simple. Really, that's just how it is. And I don't think that any of those trick baits are going to outfish a guy fishing his confidence bait in the right area, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely does. I've always just had this, Andy can confirm, I've just had this weird intrigue around the Japanese culture when it comes to bass fishing. And just like someone like yourself that has like a Daiwa, Lucky Craft that can tap into like a potentially a source overseas, like these Japanese anglers because like we keep seeing all this wild stuff happen where people like from coming from Japan that like, they're like, no way that works. And then we watch, Taku that comes out with something we've never seen before and it just waxes everybody on it. Like I don't know. I had to ask because I was very curious, but
I'm sure there's plenty of stuff out there that I don't know about that I could potentially be more effective with, but yeah, it seems like I'm the last guy to hear about the trick stuff anymore. So, it's kind of one of those things where I'm going and doing my thing. And, like let's take the Alabama rig, for example. I saw that thing a good 8 months before it came to light, when Paul won that tournament. I saw it a good 8 months prior. And my buddy Jonathan Newton's house, he lives out there in Florence, Alabama, right there on the Tennessee River. And I go, what is that thing? He goes, oh, they call that the Alabama rig. He goes, it's great on schooling fish. And I go, does it work? And he goes, oh, yeah. Man, you put in a school and you catch them. It's great. He goes, do you want one? I go, no, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then, fast forward, 6-8 months, Paul Elias wins the tournament with 120 pounds or something and just crushed everybody. And then, look at what happened since then. So much has happened because of that Alabama rig. And I said it was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it was. I'm trying to remember where I heard it. I think it was Kevin Van Dam that was saying something along the lines of like he was brought the Ned rig before the Ned rig was out, and how he said it was the dumbest thing, and then everyone like smallmouth wise is catching him on the Ned rig. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I feel like a lot of people feel like they're in that circle of like, hey, I'm the last to hear about these techniques, and it might almost be like this mental like blockage that we have as anglers when we have a confidence rolling with a set of techniques where it's like, yeah, that looks cool, it's new, but like I don't see where I'd apply it. I'm catching them the way I'm catching them now, and then you don't think about adding it. Or like somebody like yourself where a lot of your travels throughout the year on tournaments, so you don't really have time per se to go and experiment with something completely new, if that makes any sense. Maybe that's
makes a ton of sense. And that's another thing that I've done is I've tried some trick stuff that I've thought about, and not that someone has told me. It wasn't something that I learned from Japan. There's a couple things that I've tried, but man, when you're on the clock, I mean, with the Bass Pro Tour, I only get 2 days of practice, which 2 days of practice is really 1 3/4 because I have to get off the water at a certain time on that final day. And if I'm fishing the next day, I have to get off even earlier so I can finish all my tackle before it gets dark. So really, when you're out there, you're on a lake that you haven't fished, you don't know where the spots are, you're going out and now you're trying a bait that you've never tried before, you've never heard it's ever worked before, you've never seen it before, but it's something that you've tried or something that I've tied, different things. If they don't bite it on the first cast, it's hard for me to make a second one.
Yeah, that's such a good point too. If you don't catch anything like right away on a new bait, like you lose all confidence and that's ever going to catch them. Oh. Which actually, so go ahead, Andy.
I was saying it's just a giant waste of time, and when you only have a day and a half to figure out what the heck is going on to make a second cast, you might as well pick up something that's simple. Bass are fish. Fish have 2 reasons to be alive, and that's to make more fish and to eat. So simplicity will catch you more bass in most situations. So that's just my personal opinion. So
I did see one thing that intrigued me that I wanted to ask about when I was making the thumbnail for this episode. There's a picture on Major League Fishing of you holding up a Zako with a tungsten bullet weight and a flipping hook. And I feel like I've seen somebody do something similar in terms of like the bait on that kind of rig, like maybe like it was a swim bait or like a easy swimmer type of deal in Florida. But like, what made you think of like a Zako? Like, where are you fishing that specific technique?
So that I like sight fishing with. I use that as like a little bluegill kind of shaped fish, and there's something about that bait on a bed. The fish, they bite it really, really well. And when the Zako first came out, Brett Height and I were the ones that were really experimenting with that thing. We had that thing before anybody else did, and we had a tournament where they were spawning. I want to say it was at Bull Shoals. It was a Bass Elite event, and the water was high. They were spawning, and they were in the bushes a little bit. And we kind of got on that pattern of sight fishing with it when we saw them. But then, shoot, you just start pitching that thing in the bushes like you would any kind of other creature bait, and they were biting it as well. It falls like a tube, really. But on the bottom is that fork tail. You dive that fork tail chartreuse, and really it seems like it gets the fish, that are on a bed more, aggravated quicker than they do on, a standard Texas rig or creature bait or something. To me, I think they look at it as it's a bluegill and they want it out there as fast as possible.
That's super cool.
My wheels are turning.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I saw that picture.
It really is.
What's that?
Yeah, it's a good bait. 20-pound fluorocarbon sunline, and I just rig like a 1/4 ounce arc tungsten weight on there and pitch it around. If they're actively on the bed, then that's the bait that I like to pitch on them. It just seems like they bite it faster than other baits.
That's super cool. I was sitting there, I'm like, why isn't he throwing like a weighted EWG? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, that's a chatterbait trailer. What is he doing? And I had to ask. My wheel, like Andy was saying, the wheels are turning. I'm like, I gotta ask. Yeah. But
it's a good bait.
Oh, for sure. And I was today years old when I realized you can, if you put it on a chatterbait sideways and then twist it at the nose, that it's like, oh, you don't need super glue for it to have it on if you have a keeper.
It stays on a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that was a thing until someone sent it to me. Like I think literally yesterday. Yeah. So, kind of talking about the deal when it comes to you and tournaments. Say in practice, are you starting out trying a power technique, or are you going straight to finesse, get bites and kind of accelerate the process? Like, how does that work for you in terms of tournament practice?
Yeah, it definitely varies. There's no one set kind of game plan. You kind of have to take in the time of year, where you're at. There's a lot of different scenarios that go into it. Typically, I like to try and fish fast early on just to cover as much water as I possibly can. A good rule of thumb is to run a reaction bait, whether it's a 1.5 or a chatterbait, something like that, to cover ground and find these areas that are certain areas that have more fish in it. And then when you come back into those certain areas for the tournament, then let's say you go through, or a bunch of guys are fishing there or something, or maybe you see an isolated piece of structure. That's where you pull out that slower moving bait, whether it's a Texas rig or wacky rig, or that weightless Senko kind of a thing. It just really depends. Then you have to take into account how good the fishing is. If the fishing's good, then there's a good chance you can run reaction baits the whole time. If it's really slow, then sometimes you have to slow down. And then there's that weird transition where if it's really slow, I almost think that sometimes you can catch more on a reaction bait than you can moving something slow, because sometimes they need to react to bite it. When the water is really, really cold. It's our first tournament of the year last year. I did terrible, but it was in Louisiana. It snowed in practice. We had 1 day of practice. It snowed. The only bites I had 4 bites that day, and I caught every one of them on a 1.5. I tried flipping. I tried, doing a bunch of stuff, never had a bite, and in the tournament I had to go back, and I caught one fishing slow the first day, and then the second day of practice, I think I caught them all cranking and throwing chatterbait. So, really there's that weird fine line between slowing down your bites when it's tough or staying fast to get those reactions, because, especially in a tournament like that, where we had 1 day of practice, it's hard to catch anything. Sometimes you just have to just roll and just fish areas. I think on the second day of that tournament, I started in an area I had not been to before, which is hard to do in a tournament. You normally go to what you think, but when you fish all day on day one through everything that you've learned in practice and you catch one, what do you do the next day? You just wing it and go somewhere. And that's what I did. And I ended up catching them, better than I did the first day. And, winding a lot more, fishing something moving, fishing a 1.5 and fishing a chatterbait, different things. But, really sometimes it's, like I said, there's that weird fine line between slowing down to get the bites versus speeding up to get the bites.
Yeah. And I think like what you mentioned, that's a lot of instinct, but I always get so curious about it. Cause I think there's an article that I think it was MLF that posted it. Spencer Sheffield recently. I think that he was saying something along the lines of like, for offshore fishermen that like, I can't, don't take me verbatim here, but it was something along the lines of like finesse fishing from an offshore standpoint would always win tournaments, something along the lines of that. That's why I wanted to bring it up. So the fact that I think it's an interesting conversation because I feel like it always plays, regardless of where we're at. We always see somebody. I mean, a drop shot is always, I feel like, for people in a top 10, regardless of location, is on deck for folks. So I feel like there's always a way to win on Finesse, but like to your point, like there's always the flip side of like power fishing faster, where that could also be better than slowing down and lightening up the line. But we do have go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say we have a few questions, but if you're gonna say something, let it rip, and then we'll get into a couple questions here.
No, go for it. Let's jump into some questions.
Okay, we have one from Jim here that says, "I think Brent is a big fan of Sprout bend hooks." I don't know what Sprout bend is. Maybe you know. He says, "Talk a bit about hook bends and when to use the different types." Great question.
That is a great question. So I think that Sprout bend is, I have always called it like that O'Shaughnessy bend.
Okay.
If you look at Gamakatsu has, it's a straight shank worm hook. They also have a offset worm hook that has that O'Shaughnessy bend to it. And it's not just a standard round bend hook point. It has that, it's almost like the hook point is turned in just a hair toward the shank of the hook. So RoboWorm has taken that Gamakatsu straight shank worm hook and they put their keeper on it. And they call it the rebarb. You know, they put that shrink tubing on there. That rebarb hook has that O'Shaughnessy bend to it. And that is a fish landing bend. You know, it's very effective. Now, they don't make it in the heavier flipping style hook. So when I go to actual flipping hook, then I go with just their standard straight shank flipping hook. You know, that the heavy cover flipping. It's just straight shank hook. It has just a slight O'Shaughnessy bend to it. And, you know, to me, that is just a fish landing hook. So you look at the stinger hook that I did, that I've done with Gamakatsu, has that same bend. But, you know, we use it for a drop shot. We use it for a wacky rig. But it has that O'Shaughnessy bend. You know, with Aaron Martin's working with him, you know, he knew that hook was so good. They came out with that G Finesse treble hook. So that G Finesse treble hook, it's not a true EWG. You know, a lot of those EWG trebles, they come out and they have just that hard, like 90-degree turn that goes to that hook point. It's more of a relaxed turn. So it's kind of that in between of a EWG bend, but it's more rounded getting there. Again, it's just a fish landing, hook. So when I go to those trebles, that's almost the only treble I use anymore. You know, I'll use some round bends for a few things, but when it goes to trebles, you know, if you're cranking, it just seems like I've landed way more fish on a jerkbait, on a crankbait, using that G Finesse that has that Sprout style kind of O'Shaughnessy bend to it.
So is that slight bend back in, is that supposed to be like when that hook is rotating through a fish's mouth, where if it's more straight, like a round bend, like it's easier to come off from a round bend, whereas that if it curves in, it gives it something to stop against? Does that make sense?
Correct. So if you think about, you know, a hook, you know, just a round bend hook, if you can take that hook and turn it in a little bit more, it traps them a little bit more. If this is the hook point, if it's round like this, it can come off easier than if it comes in a little bit. It just seems like it when it gets in past the barb, it has a harder time to rock out, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
to me, it's a fish landing bend. Really, it honestly is. You know, you can, believe me, you can hook fish on every bend out there, but if you want to land more, you use that style of hook.
Does that affect how you set the hook, or does it affect that at all in terms of having that rolled in? Like, do you have to be softer or lean more than? Okay.
No, I don't do anything different. I fish it exactly the same way I've done, you know, everything else. I think that when it comes to, you know, crankbait or different things, jerkbait, you know, especially with that G Finesse, it takes very little pressure to actually get a hook penetration. You know, that G Finesse hook, not only is it's thinner, but it's rigid, so it doesn't flex, it doesn't bend. But then it has that coating on it that's actually slicker than like a nickel. So it's actually like it's a stiffer, thinner hook that's lubricated, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So it takes very little pressure to land this fish. So what I've done, especially with a jerkbait, is we have a 6'9" topwater jerkbait rod under the Tatula Elite Series rods. It's called the small topwater jerkbait rod. It's a 6'9" medium light action rod. That I've started throwing that. I'm telling you, I've landed way more fish on a jerkbait going to the G Finesse and then going to that rod than I ever have in my entire career. There's something about it. When one gets that jerkbait, it's almost a guarantee he's getting in the boat. And I believe it's because of that hook and it's because of that Daiwa rod. There's something about that lighter action rod. You don't need to get a lot of pressure on that fish to hook himself. A lot of times people use too heavy of an action of a rod with a jerkbait. So when you're snapping that jerkbait and one gets it, you're snapping it and you feel it, your reaction is to immediately pull on it. So you snap, you hook them when you do that. When you snap and feel them, any pressure pull on that, all you're doing is opening up that wound in his mouth where those hooks are and give him a better chance of actually backing those hook out, when he's jumping. So having that shock absorber of that real lightweight rod has really changed the way I've caught him. Same thing with topwater. I use that same rod for topwater. It doesn't matter if it's a big topwater or if it's a little bitty thing. I can throw that same exact rod, and I've been landing more because of it.
That's intriguing. That's one thing we always talk about on this platform is the equation of rod, reel, line, hook. Like if there's one thing's out of place, everything kind of falls into cahoots, where it's just, it's super intriguing. I feel like this is a trend. I don't know. I could be wrong, but like a trend in terms of just softer rods where like, I feel like everyone used to be like the 7-foot mediums or too heavier of actions, where obviously technology's advanced now in terms of like being able to create those minute differences, but it's definitely interesting from a treble hook standpoint, or even like chatterbaits, how much that has changed in terms of softer rods. It's
softer rod, glass rod is a big key for me cranking and chatterbait as well. You need to have that glass rod. You'll land way more fish, and it has to do with reacting to that bite. You react too aggressively to that bite, you're gonna lose more fish. Have that dampening effect with that glass, you'll end up landing a lot more.
So you a glass guy for chatterbaits?
100%. Yeah, glass for that and anything cranking. The only reason why I don't use it for a jerkbait and a topwater is a jerkbait topwater, you're snapping it all day long, and that glass is a little bit heavier and it'll wear out. You get those big Popeye forearms wearing that, that thing all day. So that's why I've gone to that real lightweight 6'9" medium light action Tatula Elite for that scenario. And you can snap that thing all day long, and it's nothing. You can fish it. You don't get any fatigue from it. It's very lightweight, and you land more fish too. But when it comes to the chatterbait, I actually designed a rod under that Tatula Elite Series rod. It's a 7.4 medium heavy action glass rod, and the chatterbait is notorious for losing them, but that glass rod you will land more.
You're making Andy's day right now.
Yeah, me and Bailey have had this debate for like 2 years now. I feel like what's better, composite or glass for a chatterbait? I am 100% on board with the glass rod. Like there's nothing better. Nothing better.
I'm with you.
I think I've gone through like 8 different chatterbait rods in like the past 2 years, just trying to find something I like. I did. What was the Daiwa
Type
DX?
H, the Tackle Warehouse version that was designed after like that evergreen Hercules Leopold rod, but it was like $140. That rod was awesome. I love that rod.
I honestly haven't tried that one, because under the Tatula Elite line, I designed one for throwing a chatterbait and a 2.5. So, I mean, when we had that, I've never looked back.
Yeah, that for folks that are out there, we're actually one thing I mentioned. Well, I failed to mention in the introduction. We got to mention in the outro, but there is a Daiwa giveaway going on at Omnia Fishing. I put the link down below. But if anyone's looking for like not like just your basic lineup of rods, but not like your crazy spending $300 on a rod, but like the Tatula series, dude, I've had a few for what, 120, 170 bucks in that range. Am I hitting that on the head?
Yeah, I think they're, high 1, high 2, depending on, there's some on that line that we have the AGS guides. Now the AGS guides are carbon fiber guides. So the price is going to go up with those things, but it's for a reason. Those guides that are on there, no one else, no other manufacturers have those because Daiwa is making those guides.
Mm-hmm.
The whole string of guides on that AGS rod is going to weigh the same amount as the biggest guide on another rod, like a titanium guide. So they're really, really light. So anytime you decrease the weight, you're going to increase sensitivity. So when you get to those, that Tattoo Elite line with the AGS guides, the air guide system, they are going to be about $75 to $100 more for that.
Yeah, I think those rods are like $279.99, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. So, but it's a great, lineup. I mean, it wasn't, hey, here's these rods with your name on them. It was, we worked on these things for probably 2 years before they came to market.
Mm-hmm.
And every guy on the team has, a handful of rods, that are technique specific, so Ish has a flip stick and a frogging rod. I have a drop shot rod that's a spinning rod. I have the cranking rod that we talked about, the 7.4 that's a chatterbait rod. I have a 7.2 that's a medium action that's great for a 1.5 and any kind of small medium crankbait. So, we came up with a line and it was, hey, we want, I want a 7.2 for the medium action cranking rod. And Ish says, I want a 7.6, I want an 8, I want a 7.4 for the frog rod, whatever it is. Everyone said, this is what I want. This is the handle length I want. I want this many guides. I mean, it was top to bottom, ins and outs that we wanted on that rod, and they came to market with them. So it's great. For me, I'm not, I love throwing a frog, but I'm not a specialist at it. So, if I'm going to go do it, I want to pick up the Ish Monroe frog rod because that's what he's a specialist at. I want to know that's what, a guy that knows what he's doing, that's how he's going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy for me to do that. So, yeah, it's kind of nice that they have them like that. And, there's some great rods in that lineup, and I've never looked back. I mean, it's funny because Daiwa makes the Steez line, which is, the best of the best. And people ask me all the time, what's my favorite Steez rod? And I go, I don't know. I only use the Tattoo Elite. So I don't even know anymore. I'm so comfortable with that series of rods that I don't need to use that, crazy high dollar, rod to go and, accomplish the task.
I'm going to take a step back to a slight pass with Daiwa. When I first started bass fishing, the first 3 rods I had were Daiwa Light and Tufts.
Yeah. There you go.
Which is what now the LT series, I think, basically is what it is in rods, right? Kind of like transmitted into a lot of the newer technology, like that weird foregrip on them. Those rods were awesome from like the mid 2000s.
I had some of those too. They were great, and even prior to that, they had the whole Team Daiwa lineup, years ago. I mean, I was a teenager when Team Daiwa was around, and that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And there was a whole line of guys, Brower and Cochran and, all these guys up there. And, Brower had his flipping stick, and it was in that, kind of the end of that Team Daiwa that kind of transitioned to that LT series, the Light and Tough. And I mean, I had all of those. That was the coolest, rod and reel package out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Andy and I have talked a bunch about, because we've both owned the Tatula rod lineup, even from like the XTs and everything. And it's like the actions though are just that they've nailed it. Like for, I mean, we could probably go on for a while. We actually have some funny Daiwa questions coming in. Anthony Geis here says the Daiwa parties must be bangers. I love to see Ish and Tak getting wild.
Oh, jeez.
That one was just hilarious.
That's like the complete opposite on the spectrum between.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Huh.
But he had a cool question though of how did the union of you and Daiwa begin?
So what's interesting is that I've used the Daiwa spinning reels from day one. I've always liked their spinning reels. I mean, even when I worked with other brands, I was still running their spinning reels because they were so good. When I was a kid, maybe 13 or 14, I started off with that. They actually still make it today. It's the SS 1300. It's a black reel with a gold spool, and they still make it today. And that was one of the coolest reels back in the day. But they've always had the best drag on the market. So that's one reason why I've always used their reels. And then, so a friend of mine, Kurt Arakawa, he was working for Jackal Baits for a long time. And I got to know him through Jackal and some of the shows out west. He's a West Coast guy. Well, he was the original one. He was working for Daiwa. He was part of the whole team thing back in the day. It was, so cool to me. Left Iowa, started working for Jackal, and then left Jackal and went back to Daiwa. And so he approached me. He's a buddy of mine. He goes, "Hey, I'm back with Daiwa now, and would really like to talk to you about running our rods and reels here in the future." And really, it was because of Kurt. He got me involved, and I mean, it's been when I first talked to him. He goes, "What do you think of the product line?" I go, "Well, you guys have the best high-end, equipment out there. They have the Steez line, but I go, it's $1,200-$1,400 for a rod and reel combo. I go, you guys really need a good, budget, product. No, I mean, not a budget product, but one that a guy can spend, $300-$400 on and get a really good rod instead of $1,400. And he goes, that's coming. He goes, we've got this new line called the Tatula series that's going to be coming out next year. He goes, I want you to come on board and try out these reels. And, that was it. They came out with that Tatula series, the first ones that had the T-wing system, which is the level wind on the front. It's revolutionary. It's a big deal for casting, because you think about a standard level wind that is on the front of that bait casting reel. When you cast, your line is trying to run through that level wind. Well, it creates a lot of friction going through that level wind, and it slows your line down. When it slows your line down, that spool is over rotating. When the spool over rotates, it creates a backlash. The T-wing system, you push the thumb bar, it has that standard level wind, but when you push the thumb bar, it folds down. When it folds down, it opens up to a bigger level wind. So there's less friction. You get better casting distance. You have fewer backlashes. I thought it was a great concept. I jumped on with them. I love those reels. They were amazing. And we've moved forward every year. I mean, that's Daiwa's whole slogan is moving forward. That's kind of that DVEC. I don't know if you've seen that Daiwa DVEC logo. That really is kind of an arrow in a sense of just moving forward. It's not being stuck in the past. We're moving forward and creating new products out there and being kind of the leader in the market. I've been fortunate to be involved with that process from the beginning of the Tatula series.
That's super cool. I mean, I think there's something to be said and something super cool. And it's definitely got to be a lot of pride on your end being with somebody for that long. Like when you are with them for that long and you have that much investment from a product design standpoint, it's not really, I always have this weird thing with the word sponsor. I feel like at that point, it's a partner. It's not even really, you're both investing the same amount in each other. It's really what they got to feel like for you. That's pretty cool. For sure. And it's, they're a company that you can stand behind. They have such a good product. Like I said, it was for a number of years there. I used their spinning reels, even though I was using other bait casters. I was using their spinning reels because I believed that I was a better fisherman because of it. And like I said, now, anytime I don't do well in the tournament, it's not because of my equipment. It's because of me, and I know that, I never have to worry about my equipment out there. It always runs flawless. I've never had a reel breakdown. I've broken a rod here and there, but I'm telling you, over the last 5-6 years, I've probably broken maybe 1 or 2 rods. But think about the abuse we put these things through, and I mean, there was one rod, so I've broken 3 rods, I think, in the, for how long I've been using the Daiwa stuff. And one of them was brand new rod, shipped to me. I went out first cast, I snapped the rod on the cast. So it was damaged in shipping. And, the other ones, they were falling apart. I used them for 3-4 years and they finally just took a toll. And it could have been, I probably stepped on it. If you think about it, people go out and they think there's something wrong with the rod, that it was defective. Well, either you or your partner stepped on it the day before, on the deck of the rod, and it collapsed that actual tube on there. And, you went and cast the next day, or you set the hook and it was already fractured, and that's how it broke. So, but for how much fishing we do, we run around, it's crazy. It is wild.
How durable they are. And, like I said, now if there's a technique that I'm not familiar with, I just get the setup that, one of our guys designed for that technique, and I can go and roll and know that guy that's really good at it, skipping docks, I'll use the Howl rod. If I'll use the Ish Monroe frog rod, if I'm going to throw a frog, if I'm going to throw a drop shot, I'm going to throw the drop shot rod that I designed, so it's just, it's a confidence builder to go out and fish that stuff.
Yeah, it is definitely nice when you don't have to worry about your equipment, and then if something does fail, well, it does, obviously it sucks, but like when it's you, it feels way better because that's something you can improve on yourself, not like, dang, I have this product that like doesn't, cut it for me.
That's
never a good feeling.
Yeah.
We have a good question here from T Chang, and it's talking about the power shot. Do you power shot? And if so, how often do you power shot?
I definitely use a power shot, maybe once a year. Really, it's just when those fish are shallow and there's, the right kind of cover for it, the right kind of grass, the right kind of lay downs or different things that you're going to fish. And I use it quite a bit. I use a 7.3 medium heavy. It's a multi-purpose rod that I designed for, under that Tatula Elite series. I use a Tatula Elite reel, and then I run 16-pound fluorocarbon on there, and I use the FC Sniper Sunline stuff, and then I just use a offset shank worm hook that's just a Gamakatsu offset shank worm hook. It's not a heavy wire. It's heavy enough that I'm not going to bend it out with that 16-pound. It's light enough that you don't have to set the hook really hard, and then just a 1/4 ounce or a 3/8, depending on where you're fishing, arc tungsten weight, and it is very effective. It's a great technique. The only thing I don't like about it is that your line likes to twist, and I can't run braid to fluorocarbon on a bait caster. I've tried it, but I break the line on the hook set too often, so I run straight fluoro. Really, if it's a technique that I'm going to do all day, I'll run 2 rods. One sits in the rod box, and halfway through the day, if my line starts getting twisted too much, I'll just pull the one I've been fishing, throw it in the rod box, pull out that new one. Or I'll just take like 30 feet of line and cut it off and retie, but after a while I get down in that spool too far, and that's why I have to pull out that new one. That's the only downfall for me for running that power shot, but it hasn't hindered me. I can fish it all day, and it is very effective.
Heck yeah. Well, Brent, I have about 2 more questions for you here, and then we're gonna have some fun questions to wrap up the show. But Andy, do you have anything for Brent before I dive into him?
At this moment, I mean, it's been pretty thorough, so I'm kind of flowing here. So if I think of one, I'll kind of throw it out there.
I think you're still daydreaming over power shot. Andy loves the power shot.
I do love a power shot.
Yes.
I was thinking of a fish catch that we had in a tournament that we won together 2 summers ago on the power shot. Yeah, it was good times.
Avid power shotters up here. So with your style of fishing, with the new format change for MLF, do you see any adjustments or anything in your game, or is it going to be same game plan?
Same game plan for me. I don't feel like I really changed too much coming into this. I'm fine with it. Just tell me what we're going to do. I'll go and do it. It'll be different for sure. Who knows what's going to happen. I'm fine with it. Whatever's, better for, the greater good. I'm all for that. So if everyone wants to do that, let's do it.
Heck yeah. And dude, I love that you say like whatever the game, like whatever it is, like let's go do it. Don't really care the format. I love that. And I'm no Ken Duke, so I can't back up the stats, but to me, I feel like you're one of the most consistent anglers there on the tour because, dude, I did from 1 watching the BPT, and then 2, I did a binge one day where I was working from the couch and I was writing, and I did a binge on all the cup events that are on YouTube. And bro, you're in like every single top 10, like top 5, top 3 of those things. So whatever you're doing, I agree. Don't change
it. Just stay confident and keep fishing.
So my last question before we get into some fun questions here is obviously you're on Team X2. we're partnered with X2, and I think that's one thing is at people with that are buying boats or have boats and are cycling through batteries every year that don't really understand is the most like least visible and least sexy part of the boat is the most important part.
Yeah, honestly, it is.
Yeah, and especially for someone like you that probably I'd argue, I'm sure you fly back from some events to see family and such, but like you probably got, I would bet some of the more truck hours that I throughout the year with your truck and boat and whatever. But talk about the importance of having quality batteries in your rig, especially for your job where it relies on it.
Oh, I mean, yes, no question. I mean, it's, you can't go out and fake your batteries going out, meaning that you go out and you have something go down with a rod, you just pick up a new rod. It's there's always a backup to a backup. With your batteries, you don't. It's you have to have those batteries. Without them, you're dead in the water. It's not that often where you can have your trolling motor batteries go out and you just go out somewhere and anchor and you can catch them. It's not going to happen that way. You have to move around. So, I've run X2s now for 3-4 full seasons now. And I have never, now I ran the AGM, the dual purpose Group 31s, 100 amp hour batteries. I ran those for the first, 3, full seasons. I never drained those things down, my trolling motor batteries, ever, not once. And I've never had to jump my cranking battery either. Now think about it. I'm running one dual purpose Group 31 cranking battery. All the guys out there right now are running 2. I'm running 1 Group 31. I'm running 4 Garmin 12-inch graphs, plus all the accessories on the boat. To this day, I have never had to jump my cranking battery with an X2. I've also never burned up my trolling motor batteries in a day of practice. It's pretty rare to have it happen in the tournament. I've obviously never done it in the tournament, but on those long days where you go up north and it's in the summer and you're practicing 15 hours one day, I have not burned up those batteries. Mm-hmm. Now, halfway through the season last year, I ran the lithium batteries. They just came out with a good, Group 31, 100 amp hour lithium battery. And, I ran, I think 3 or 4 tournaments on it, never had an issue with those as well. The nice thing about that is when I swapped them out, I took out about 150 pounds of weight from the back of my boat. Lithium. So, boat gets on pad faster, top end speed's better. My draft is shallower now because of it. So, really, it just seems like a win-win situation. My dealer Anglers Marine is rigging my boat right now. I've got a full setup of 3 12-volt X2 lithiums, and I'm running the AGM X2 dual purpose, same thing, Group 31, 100 amp hour battery for cranking and all my accessories. So that's the way I've run it. It's worked so far. There's no reason for me to change it.
Heck yeah. Yeah. It's always it's not the most exciting thing to talk about. And even us at X2, we say exactly that, but it's always something good to talk about because the more education people can get, the less they're going to be being stuck at the ramp trying to start their boat, or trolling motors are dying and needing a lift back. So the more you can put into the important parts of a boat, the more you can worry about spending time on the flashy stuff that's on the front deck.
Yeah, exactly. You can actually go and fish and try that new, rod and reel or whatever, or bait or whatever it is. When you got the power to go do it, you can still do it. If you don't have power, then run into a store and try to figure out what's wrong with your batteries.
Yeah, you're going back home and you're typically not in a good mood.
No.
Yeah. I had one last thing come up. I wanted to ask. There's been this trend with forward-facing sonar of guys using 2 transducers now, of like one on your perspective and then one on like your forward. Are you running that now, or are you just doing one transducer still?
I'm just doing one transducer right now. I have the bracket that I can turn it to the perspective mode or the vertical mode. But really, I run vertical so much that I haven't even really run perspective that much. The times that I have used it, it's crazy what you can see out there. Believe me, I would love to have both on there. I don't like all the clutter. I don't like having too much up there. I would also have to have probably a third graph up front. I mean, I'm already running 4. I don't need to run 5. I feel like I can accomplish the task by running it vertical or swapping it to perspective. That's just, I feel like I'm effective by doing it. They have that mount to where I can change it if I need to.
Right.
That's good enough for me at this point. Now, I'm not saying I'm not going to change it. I'm the same guy that earlier in this podcast I talked about how the Alabama rig was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. And then, fast forward to Paul Elias just killing all of us on it. So, I'm not saying I'm going to change things out there and put 2 transducers on there. But for now, I've been running 1 for 2023. As of now, I'll be running 1 as well.
Heck yeah.
To be fair on the Alabama rig point, I think you're one of everyone for the most part that thought it was the dumbest thing they'd ever seen besides the people who were throwing it in Alabama at that time. Yeah. And they were laughing at the rest of the world.
Oh my goodness. I've never seen something change the industry more than that rig right there. It's nuts.
I can't imagine the feeling of someone that knew about it before it was a thing, and the feeling you had to have of just, you probably felt immortal at that point.
Yeah. There could be a second bait though we could throw out there, a flatworm for smallmouth. Or just a drop shot for smallmouth.
Drop shot for smallmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So I know you got to run here in a little bit. So I'm gonna get through these last 2 questions and we'll let you go. We have a question from Michael Bradley asking, how cold does it have to be for Brett to ditch the Chuck Taylors?
It's got to be pretty cold, but you know what? I've got a waterproof pair that I throw on. So
that's awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's an insulated pair, so I will run those a little bit. But
yeah, Anthony just says he wears heavier socks.
Sims wool socks on there, and you're good to go. But
yeah,
rain is the one thing that I will ditch the Chucks. I got to wear my Sims rain boots, and believe me, that's the one time that I'm happy to take the Chucks off and run something different.
Wait, you haven't gotten Sims to make your own, branded, model Chuck Taylors?
No.
Not the Brent. You're not going to make the Brent Ehrlers?
No.
Oh, that's good.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. So last question of the night. We asked everybody that's brand new to the show, their first time on this question. And that is, if you could sit down with any 3 individuals, they don't have to be the fishing industry. They could be alive 1,000 years ago or now. It doesn't matter. If you could sit down, have a steak, have a beer, and pick their brain, what 3 individuals would you invite?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. I have a lot of hobbies outside of fishing. So, I would probably do something, outside of my realm. So in the skiing world, there's a couple of, real famous snow skiers. I grew up snow skiing. I actually thought I was going to be a snow skier for a long time before I got into fishing. There's a guy named Glenn Plake that's kind of a marketing icon in the fishing world on the extreme skiing, kind of free skiing side of things. And he'd be a fun one. He's a California guy too, which is great. I've recently gotten into mountain biking. There's a couple guys on the mountain biking downhill tour that, I would snag one of those guys probably. So a skier, a mountain biker. Right now I'm getting into practical shooting. I'm doing a lot of pistol shooting and practical, kind of looking at that 3-gun stuff. I don't know a lot of guys out there. There's that McCulloch guy. I think that's his last name, Jerry McCulloch. He's like an icon on the speed shooting, practical shooting side of things. And, he knows what he's doing. So taking a specialist in kind of those 3 walks of life for me would be really cool. You got the skiing, the mountain biking, shooting, getting a group of guys like that together to be able to sit down. And those are my passions. So it's the same thing with people that are watching this show. Their passion is fishing, and we're all here because of fishing. And I have passions outside of this, and so I look up to some of these guys that I've read about and I've watched on TV, and man, I'd love to sit down and have dinner.
Heck yeah. I always enjoy this question regardless of the answers, but I also have a little bit more enjoyment when people say non-fishing related stuff, because it's kind of a cool deep dive into people's brains of childhood, sport heroes and stuff like that. Those are the ones I always kind of geek over. But yeah, dude, I've seen that downhill good grief, mountain biking stuff. That is nuts. I don't know how people do that.
They're pretty crazy. The stuff they're doing now is, it wasn't possible 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It wasn't even thought of, so it's crazy what they're doing now. I mean, those guys are nuts.
Don't you love that rationale for American sports though? It's like, hey, look at that. That looks stupid. Let's make that a sport.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're like, hey, this probably could really hurt us. Let's make it a sport.
Yeah, really. Exactly.
I love it. Well, Brent. Yeah. Well, dude, seriously, thank you so much for taking time tonight to chat with us. Appreciate you dropping some knowledge on everybody. And man, we're gonna be keeping up with you this year and hope to get you back on the show here soon.
Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure, and would love to be back.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, man.
Thanks, Brent. Yeah, you have a good night.
Yeah, thanks, looking forward to watching you this season.
Yeah, have a good 2023 season. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you, Brent.
See you guys.
Are you still geeking out over the power shot?
Lots of things.
Like
the night crawler and stretching out. Like I'm like, ooh, like I could see where that'd be really juicy in a lot of areas. So like I was actually talking to somebody here recently, and I think I'm going to do it this summer on off days. I think I'm going to start live bait fishing on Erie to try and figure out where to find and get bigger bass to bite than normal, and just like dragging live bait in places I've never tried to see if there's bass that live there.
Here's a thought. Why don't you just throw a camera down there?
Because I got to figure out how to get them to bite.
But you're not going to figure out how to get them to bite if you're throwing live bait.
But Brent did. Nightcrawler, saw what happened, 12-inch worm. Like, there's ways.
Yeah, but what are you going to imitate with a live shiner that isn't?
Oh, I'm not going to drag a live shiner, but I'm going to drag crayfish. But there's a lot of different things you can mimic a crayfish with.
So why wouldn't you just throw like a football jig or?
Dude, I'm just trying to think as a guide, okay? Like, I got to figure out how to put fish in the boat for my clients on bad days, or if they just want to target individual big fish. And
live bait's going to do that, that's for sure.
Oh, no, I'm not going to do it with clients. I'm going to do it with myself to figure out how to catch them in different areas than I ever have. So. Just another way to learn, to continue to learn. Forever a student.
Hey, easy there. We haven't released that yet.
Oh, sorry. Now you just did, didn't you?
Coming soon. Fast forward, flip, erase, reboot. I want to see you live line like an 8-inch perch and see what happens.
Oh, that'd be wild. Like also. This fall, real fast, back step like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was catching smallies in groups of perch, and I had smallmouth spitting up like 4.5, 5-inch perch at the boat.
That's wild.
Yeah. Like when I catch a perch, it'd be like a 14 to 15 incher, but if I caught a smallmouth, it would be a giant and be this big around in that school. I could literally watch the perch move and like the smallmouth chase the perch on my Mega Live when I found them. It was my last time out. It was wild. I'd rip a blade and catch a bunch of perch, and all of a sudden the smallmouth would move in, and I would watch them chase the little ones out of the school.
Forward-facing sonar is awesome when the fish aren't afraid of forward-facing sonar because you get to really watch how they behave. I know some people don't like it, but like it's such a cool tool from just a learning standpoint. It's awesome to watch them behave.
The first thing that that came to my mind, and I didn't have in a boat, was throwing my HUD 68 special and yellow perch in that 54 foot of water and just ticking and waiting 8 hours for it to get down. But I was like, if I had this right now, I bet I would catch a giant smallmouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you got to try it. No, you have to.
It might be the situation next November on that school. I'm going to go back out there, and if they're there, I'm going to have a HUD tied on just to try it.
Look at you go. You're going to forget because it's a year from now.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. One thing to mention really fast, because we still have a bunch of people on here, is Omnia Fishing is running a giveaway for Daiwa reels right now. A link is in the comments. A link is also for if you're watching us on YouTube later or listening to MP3 at a later time. Is also in the show notes. So just click on the show descriptions. Has a link right there. You guys can go and get entered. And obviously a easy way to try to win some freaking sick reels that we talked about tonight with Brent are pretty dope. So go check those out as well. If you want to order stuff on Omnia, just a reminder for everybody, we do have a discount code that can save you guys 10% on your whole order. We have all of our discount codes with all of our amazing show partners down below on every episode. So you guys can always take advantage of those. But Andy, tonight was fun. Tonight was a lot of fun. I feel like we only touched on a little bit of what we wanted to talk about with Brent. I think we're going to have to do a part 2 coming up here later this year. But we have a pretty cool show schedule for you guys coming up here forward. And I'll rattle off what's coming so you guys get to kind of inside scoop. So Friday's episode, we're going to have on last year's Hobie BOS Kayak Angler of the Year, Jordan Marshall on. So for all of you Tennessee Southern folk, he's a dang hammer. So look forward to that episode. Next Tuesday Night Live, week from today, we're having on Fletcher Shryock. And then for Friday's episode, one of the people's favorites is making his 5th, 6th visit on this show. It's been a long time, too long since we've had him on. Mr. Keith Tuma is coming back to join us.
Jeez.
So have
the
fun
host
tomorrow night.
Keith Tuma.
That's right. Our show host is making his visit back to the show. Well, guys, we're going out on. We're trying to go out on bangers this year. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have our favorite guests on. We're gonna have a whole New Year's party show deal, like at the end of the month. Okay, that'll be on the last Friday. We're gonna do it live. We're gonna do actually. Oh my gosh, there's so many details I'm leaving out right now. December 30th, dual live stream with Alex Rudd, our good buddy. We're gonna have a whole group. So if you guys remember episode 300,
we're gonna get canceled.
So it's not gonna be as bad as that episode. But we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna rein in. We're gonna celebrate this past year, rein in the new year with a whole group of friends. So do not miss live on Friday, December 30th. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But to keep this trend going, 2 weeks from today, we're getting Spencer Sheffield back on the show for Tuesday Night Live. That one's going to be fun. And then that Friday, we're probably going to add a couple more people to that show. As of right now, we have Hayden Anderson, who's a guide over in Wisconsin. We're going to be talking about some very sneaky ways that people don't really talk about for catching smallmouth. And my goal is to get somebody from the South as well, and also the West, so that we're talking about all smallmouth around the country and talk about some sneaky ways to catch them and unlock some juice. Might piss some people off, but this is what you guys are here for, to learn.
And am I going to have to divulge my secrets too?
Yes, you're forced against your will. Signed contract.
Oh, okay. I don't care.
And then, so our last Tuesday Night Live of the year is TBD right now, but if I can get it, it might be one of the coolest shows we've had. If I can get him, if he's free, really. He's already said he wants to do a show, but this would be the stamp in like the coolest things we've done.
Ooh,
if we can get him on. So I don't want to divulge that.
I'm intrigued because you haven't even told me.
No,
so,
I haven't told Andy.
I'm not privy to any of this. Well, I'm privy to some of the information, but I want to take a step back real fast and say what an end of the year after we had Spencer on the show he had. Just saying.
We're going to break down Spencer's banner year. It's going to be pretty sick. So that one's going to be fun. We're going to cough up some juice with Spencer, but it's going to be a pretty sick month. Seriously, thank you guys so much for the constant support throughout the year. It's going to be a heck of a month, and 2023 is going to be even better. Yes, Anthony, so do I. That's why I scheduled it. I swear we could do a smallmouth specific show out there, but I know there's actually a few good smallmouth specific talk shows or podcasts out there. The things like Smalley Talk podcast. That's a good show over there too. But 2023 is looking freaking awesome, and we have a lot in store for you guys. Apparel is coming. I promise. I'm trying to get it done within the next couple of weeks. It's there. We're just waiting on some very vital information to confirm it and make it public, so you guys can get hoodies, sun shirts, coffee mugs, thermoses, Yetis, all that stuff, hats. A lot of it we're really excited to share with you guys. But a fun last month of 2022 for shows. And then I already
Big
have a
stuff
couple
coming.
scheduled for 2023 in January to kickstart the year off in the right way. But for real, you guys are amazing. Always appreciate the constant support. This platform is freaking sick. Like this is we don't do this just because like we do this because we love it. We do it because you guys love it and you guys show up and we learn a lot about bass fishing.
Yeah. And can I throw something in there real fast on the Lure Lab side, which is our new show? Guys, if you're listening here and you are following on Instagram, throw an inbox message of what you want to see in the future so I can find guys to bring them on to talk about that specific technique and bait. So please do that, because what we always strive to do is to tailor our shows to the viewers and what everyone wants to see. And it just helps us even more bring the best content possible to you.
Yeah. If you haven't checked out Lure Lab yet and you're tackle junkie, or you want to learn more specifically about certain techniques, certain baits, that is the show for you. Andy has been doing a great job with that. He's been getting on people that are known in the industry for being good at such technique or such bait and know the very minute nuances that you can do with each and setups and all that jazz. He's been getting the right personnel on for it. So it's taken that show to new heights, and highly encourage you guys to go check that out. They're 20-minute shows. So like they're quick, straight to the point, giving you the juice quick. You don't have to listen to like Andy and I talk and ramble for an hour and a half like we're doing right now to find the juice. That one just unlocks it for 20 minutes straight. So you'll enjoy that one. Again, just we're really excited for what's coming. I know we've been saying that for probably the past 5 months, but like anything that's worth doing, we've been spending a lot of time in the background, making sure we're doing it right. So once we can do it, we can actually shut up and stop saying we're excited what's coming.
I feel like the back half of this year has been nothing but like planning for the future, and it's awesome and exciting.
Yeah.
Helicopter lure, fantastic.
I think it's in the store for sure. That should be a show, the Lure Lab show. Do not throw this.
The Bunker Hunt Spider, like should have that one too.
Yeah, that's good. Andy, do you have anything for the folks coming up? If anybody wants to go and catch some steelhead or anything like that?
Well, so steelhead, I'm actually going to run a winter special for Western New York steelhead fishing. There'll be 5-hour trips for $175 for one and $250 for two, just because we're limited in time, like fishable time, till about the end of January. And then come February, my price is actually going up to $300 for one, $400 for two, $500 for three. We're averaging like 10 to 30 bites a day on the trips when we get out and really catch some really quality fish. But what I really want to get to is April scheduling is on a hold at the current, but May and June are booking up really fast for smallmouth fishing. And that's probably my absolute favorite time to catch them. It's pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn, all within the 2 months. We can target them a variety of different ways: blades, swim baits, drop shot Ned, crankbaits, jerk baits, spinner baits. Like, we can have a lot of fun in those months. I did have a slight price increase of $50 per day, so we're at $500 for a full day. You get to ride in my brand new bass boat, Camus CX-19, and we will catch a ton of smallmouth if you want to get out and jam on them. Like, big one. Yeah, like big fish last year, client caught was almost 6.5. I got two that were 6 3/4, like big smallmouth. It was a fun year.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, get in touch, guys. His social media and email is down below if you guys ever need it. It's on every show description. And I think that wraps it up. I think one more thing, and looking way ahead, but we talked about it today, so it's relevant. Well, we talked about it today in our internal meeting, but we're going to be at the Classic and Red Crest this year. So if you guys are going to be around at those events, hit us up. Let's grab a beer. Let's meet up. Yeah. If we should do a meetup, let us know. We can do a meetup at one of our booths and get some people around and shoot the shit, talk some fishing. But let us know you're going to be at those events. It's going to be fun. But Andy, I think that's a wrap for tonight. As always, folks.
Hold on. This comment, but we're going to do it. Bailey wants me to get in a kayak next year. So I think we're going to switch it up and we're going to go largemouth or smallmouth fishing with ice rods and kayaks.
So I think I have the upper hand because I already did that this past year.
Frick, screw it. Can't do it.
Forrest and I caught 5+ pounders on ice rods for smallmouth.
Yeah, that would be fun though. We could do it on my bass boat and catch them on ice rods.
Maybe we have to bring some challenge videos to the Serious Angler channel. I don't know. It's up to you guys. So here's the thing. We're gonna lay it out. We're honest with all of you guys. YouTube sucks in the fact that like long form content, like hour and 20 minutes going on right now, clashes with like a 20-minute fishing video. So YouTube doesn't like showing both. But if you guys want to see fishing content, we will put in. I'm not saying we're gonna put out one a week or like that sort of deal, but like maybe once a month. If you guys want to see something like that, let us know, and Andy and I will go out and fish, film some fun challenge style videos where I throw.
As long
Andy
as it's on a body of water that you won't get DQ'd from a tournament, because I'm a licensed guide, so we got to be careful where we go.
Yeah, but I'm not paying you to guide me, so there you go. They can show it.
That's fair.
Yeah. If you guys want to see fishing content on this channel and not just Andy and I's personal YouTube channels, let us know. We can do some serious angler stuff, and we do have some trips planned, so hopefully there'll be some more coming this year. But Andy, I think let's wrap this thing up. Folks, appreciate you guys, especially if you stuck around this whole episode. Appreciate you guys. If you're listening on MP3, please give us a rating and review. Helps us out big time. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you guys are watching on YouTube. Have a good night, folks. We will see y'all on Friday.